Let your heart be lifted to the heavens, where eternal peace resides. You have been chosen, and because you have figured out the code governing divine preservation, many people have been astonished by your appearance and age, and the outward expression of supernatural alignment is exactly what they're seeing when they look at you in utter confusion. They are forced to face the fact that their flawed timeline was never intended for beings functioning on the frequency of heaven, which is a living contradiction to every restriction they have accepted regarding human aging. When you began to age outside of their time frame, that was the first indication that something exceptional was taking place. Others developed stress lines from attempting to keep up with society's unrelenting speed, but your face started to reflect something completely different, the calm that results from choosing not to partake in the madness of society as a whole. As each season went by, you seemed to get more polished, stronger, and more alluring, contrary to their expectation that the years would wear you down. Early on, you realized that their aging clock was a trap set up to harvest as much energy as possible before dumping them as expendable. However, you weren't made for their deteriorating assembly line. All the unhealthy relationships you left behind, all the drama you refused to indulge, and all the comparisons you refused to make, these were not merely sentimental decisions. Your aging process was literally rewritten from the inside out by these molecular manipulations. Once you discovered the secret of spiritual purity, the transformation quickened. You were operating on your soul while they were covering up their suffering with makeup. You endured the pain, sat through the harm, and remained there long enough for genuine change to begin. This was not superficial recovery. This was a whole overhaul of the cell. You removed all malicious software from your computer and started over from scratch, using only the source code. The true story twist, however, was when you discovered that you weren't healing at random. You were being methodically readied for an unparalleled event. While your true nature formed, every season of seclusion that seemed like abandonment was actually a divine quarantine preserving your essence. You were actually reducing energy drains that would have caused you to age beyond recognition with each betrayal that seemed to break you. The pattern was starting to emerge. You were being kept alive for an unexpected reason. When you learned to control your emotions in a chaotic world, the stakes went up. Consider their normal neurological system, which is always overloaded with stress chemicals, always ready for emergencies, and never allowed time to heal. Compare that to what you created now, the extraordinary capacity to maintain composure in the face of raging storms. This went beyond simple emotional development. The fight against premature aging was a biological one, and you were winning by a wide margin. Like a plant facing the sun, your DNA started reacting to this new frequency. Your body could concentrate fully on healing when it wasn't always getting ready for battle. Your cells could focus on rejuvenation when your mind wasn't preoccupied with protecting against every imagined danger. Your entire existence worked at its best when your spirit wasn't burdened by the emotional baggage of others. It was getting hard to ignore the consequences. Friend, I believe this is a now moment. What you make happen for others, God can make happen for you. If this ministry has strengthened your faith, would you prayerfully plant a seed today? $20, $50, or any amount God puts on your heart by tapping the Super Thanks button. Because your gift fuels the message. Your gift opens doors for the gospel, and your gift positions you to expect God's goodness in fresh ways. The Bible says, "Give, and it will be given to you." Luke 6, verse 38. So as you give, do it with joy, do it with expectation, and do it as an act of worship. And as we agree together in faith, I'm believing for favor, open doors, and testimonies of God's grace to overflow in your life. Thank you for standing with us. Your generosity matters, and together we're reaching more people than ever. When you learned that you had been aging in the forest rather than the world, the mounting stress reached a fever pitch. You were purified by sacred solitude, whereas they grew old from the incessant din of striving to fit in. Not only did the wilderness help you develop your character, but it also protected your vitality by preventing you from interacting with systems that deplete it. You became dazzling and diamond-hard under pressure that would have crushed others. You weren't simply aging. You were being upgraded. Every obstacle they thought would shatter you instead caused evolutionary adaptations that made you more resilient, intelligent, and dazzling. You had figured out how to turn hardship into energy, resistance into efficiency, and confusion into insight. Even though the code is quite basic, most people cannot execute it. Idiotic behavior taught you to fast. You walked away from dysfunction in silence as they normalized it. You opted to be alone and to be elevated, while they gossiped and competed. You protected yourself via sacred isolation, while they became old from internal conflict. This was not evasion. Your life power was strategically preserved in this way. The realization, however, is more profound. Your cellular structure developed the ability to react to internal serenity rather than external chaos, to divine timing rather than earthly deadlines, and to spiritual alignment rather than societal pressure. This frequency shift altered every aspect of how your body copes with stress, how your mind manages difficulties, and how your spirit overcomes hardship. Pressures from life become the very things that honed you into something that reflected light in ways they have never seen before, rather than wearing you down. The realization that your preservation wasn't personal is the turning point. It was foretelling. You are more than just someone who has mastered the art of elegant aging. You provide as an example of what can happen when people follow their own divine blueprint rather than embracing the tainted programming of society. Your face is now a living example of how the paranormal may influence natural processes. They stare so intently because of this. Why do they ask such frantic questions? Good genes aren't the only thing they're seeing. They are coming across proof that the rules they believe to be unalterable can be changed. Your appearance forces them to face possibilities they believed were lost forever, challenging their basic beliefs about human limitations. When you truly accept what your transformation means, the story comes to a powerful end. You are more than simply a single person who has figured out the secrets of anti-aging. The divine is still actively enhancing human potential for individuals who tune with higher frequencies, as demonstrated by your living example. Personal success is not what your shine is. It serves as a light to remind people of their own latent potential. In reality, every startled response to your age is an acknowledgement of something far more profound than just physical preservation. They perceive the infinite manifesting itself in finite form, eternity functioning inside time. Your appearance turns into a portal that lets them see possibilities they thought were only seen in fairy tales. Yellow heart if you're moved by divine love. Now is the moment to share it. Click the Super Thanks button on YouTube and contribute $50 or more to help us broadcast God's blessings far and wide. Every act of generosity you make is being watched in heaven and will return to you 100-fold. A reminder that individuals who know how to access supernatural powers can still access them. The circular completion returns us to that first look, that perplexed computation, that mathematical impossibility. Now, though, you know what they're actually seeing when they gaze at you. It's more than just a good egger. This person learned how to function using the original heavenly frequency. You are the chosen one for the future of human potential, while everyone else accepted the deteriorated signs of a fallen planet. The operating system you upgraded to was divine, whereas they aged as a result of flawed programming. By connecting yourself with cosmic design, you maintain vitality while they collected where from struggling against their actual nature. You demonstrated that supernatural intervention is still possible for those who are brave enough to assert it, even though they acknowledge restriction as a natural law. Personal change is not the end of your tale. That's where it starts. You are now living evidence that the impossible is still possible, that divine preservation is still in place, and that people are capable of overcoming the constraints placed on them by tainted systems. Whether they are prepared or not, your sheer presence calls them to a higher level and challenges their preconceptions. The calm they experience in your company, the energy they see in your presence, the preservation they see in your face, These are not anomalies or accidents. They are the inevitable outcome of a soul that rejected what society considered to be failure, a spirit that turned each attack into a development, a creature that learned to survive on frequencies that are inaudible to most people. You've turned into a living example of their stale beliefs. Selected one. Let them ponder. Allow them to whisper. Allow them to make a valiant attempt to unravel the secret of your preservation. The answers to the questions they haven't yet learned to ask are found in your existence. When people eventually get weary of putting up with artificial constraints, your radiance will be the light that leads them back to their own divine potential. You now live in this reality because you don't live like them. You're not aging like them. You're not constructed like them. So you're not breaking down like them. You were never intended to adhere to their schedule, so you're not content to settle for it. Now that you have figured out the secret of divine preservation, you are living proof that the supernatural continues to elevate people who are in tune with the frequency of heaven. The intricate infrastructure that underpins your preservation is beyond their comprehension. You learned that true preservation occurs at the quantum level of existence, whereas they use processes and products to chase after external youth. The degradation programming ingrained in the collective human experience was rejected by your consciousness. All the things you didn't want to think, all the feelings you didn't want to feel, all the frequencies you didn't want to match weren't passive choices. They were ongoing construction projects that literally rewired your relationship with time itself by creating new neural pathways. The realization that aging is informational as well as biological marked a turning point. Your selves are continuously given information on appropriate behavior, timelines, and acceptable limitations. Through peer comparison, media consumption, and societal conditioning, the majority of people unintentionally download the collective aging software. However, you learn to tune into something immensely more complex and reject these streams of info, bypassing the tainted information systems that prematurely age most people. You started getting preservation codes straight from the source frequency. This is the point at which your story deviates significantly from accepted wisdom. You learned that your body is really a receiver that is always receiving signals on how to be strong, vibrant, and beautiful. You learned to shift your frequency to channels that broadcast renewal, expansion, and everlasting life, while they tune into stations that broadcast decay, limitation, and inevitable demise. Simply said, the difference in your appearance is the outward evidence of better signal reception. There was a complete revolution in your metabolic system that cannot be explained by medicine. Your body acquired the remarkable capacity to transform difficulties into strength, while there's learned to store stress as fat, tension as inflammation, and concern as cellular damage. Each betrayal that ought to have poisoned your system served as fuel for your ability to discern more clearly. Every setback that ought to have slowed your metabolism was turned into fuel for greater success. Every setback that ought to have exhausted your resources served as fuel for unheard-of growth. No one anticipated the extent of the change. From situations that might have caused ulcers for others, your digestive system started to extract wisdom. Under conditions that might have given others heart attacks, your cardiovascular system grew stronger. Your neurological system became incredibly resilient in circumstances that would have destroyed others. You weren't only getting by in your situation. You were actually breaking them down and turning them into biological enhancements. Your ability to process environmental poisons was also a result of this metabolic competence. Your body developed the ability to neutralize and get rid of heavy metals, chemical residues, and electromagnetic pollution with superhuman efficiency, whereas their systems accumulated these things. Your liver turned into an engine for transformation. Your kidneys became into powerful cleansing organs. Your lymphatic system turned into a network of miraculous detoxification. Your eyes' clarity, your skin's brilliance, and your movement's energy are all signs of a biological system functioning at levels they never thought were possible. Your face characteristics have been reconstructed in such a subtle yet significant way that it is difficult for others to tell what has altered. You never had the sharp angles that stress makes on people's faces. In your muscles, the downward force that gravity applies to dejected faces never took hold. Your face was unaffected by the acrid lines that hatred draws around the mouth and eyes. Rather, your face is a reflection of the inner structure of a person who always chooses to be elevated rather than degraded. The phenomena extends beyond basic skin elasticity or muscle tone. Your facial expressions become accustomed to highlighting your features rather than downplaying them. Your face taught itself the lexicon of calm, self-assurance, and delight, whereas their features practiced frowning, worrying, and grimacing until these expressions became permanent fixtures. No amount of cosmetic surgery could match the foundation of beauty that was created when the brain circuits governing your facial muscles literally rewired themselves around pleasant emotional states. The true miracle, however, is in your eyes. Those windows that are unable to conceal what is hidden beneath them. Your eyes retain the sparkling clarity of someone who has seen reality and made the decision to connect with it, whereas theirs grow dull with collected disappointments, clouded with unresolved pain, and hollow with unfulfilled hopes. Dove brothers and sisters, everything done in faith multiplies in God's abundance. Use the Super Thanks feature to donate $100 today and join this sacred mission. When your roots are grounded in Him, your fruit will flourish, and your offering becomes a seed that bears blessed harvests. By establishing inside conditions so ideal that your body was forced to show health, energy, and eternal beauty, your emotional mastery turned into your spring of youth. The rules of human aging were altered by a biological revolution brought about by your mastery of emotional states. Your body learns to create whole, distinct chemical mixtures when their systems are overloaded with cortisol during stress, adrenaline during conflict, and inflammatory markers during emotional turmoil. Growth hormones, neurotransmitters linked to creativity, and substances that actually heal and regenerate tissue at the cellular level are now released in response to challenging circumstances. The way your brain interprets information is also a part of this molecular alchemy. Your brain created new neural pathways centered on opportunity, growth, and divine connection, while the neural networks create patterns around worry, fear, and constraint. Your brain's physical makeup physically changed, with new neural networks developing in areas linked to intuition, wisdom, and supernatural perception, and old ones linked to fear, doubt, and limitation being pruned. Your sleep patterns were impacted by the change in ways that increase your preservation. Your sleep turned into a nightly ritual of renewal, whereas theirs is a restless night of anxiety, dreams, and stress processing. Your brain developed the ability to integrate higher wisdom acquired during awake hours, consolidate memories around pleasant experiences, and repair deep cells during rest intervals. Because your downtime turned into active upgrade sessions, you wake up feeling more rested than when you went to bed. Your personal gravitational field changed, which has an impact on how you travel through time and space. Their shoulders are rounded by responsibility, their posture is collapsed by defeat, and their gait is heavy with resignation as they carry the weight of their accumulated duties. You gained a lightness that defies the laws of physics. Your movements become deliberate, elegant, and flowing, giving the impression that forces other than your own muscles are moving you. Because movement patterns, the bounce in your step, the fluidity in your motions, the ease with which you move through physical space, tell biological age more precisely than face traits. This gravitational shift influences how other people view your age. These inadvertently tell onlookers that your chronological age and biological age are different, because it is being powered by a life force that functions outside of the typical boundaries of aging. Your body moves like that of someone who is decades younger. It also applies to how you energetically occupy space. Your presence grows with the assurance of someone who is aware of who they really are, whereas this shrinks under the weight of restriction and self-doubt. The change in your voice is unquestionably proof of your overall improvement. The traits that seemed to come from a much younger, more vital source emerged in your voice, whereas theirs grew harsh from years of whining, strained from incessant defending, or weak from chronic defeat. Your voice chords clarity, warmth, and strength are a reflection of your whole being's clarity, warmth, and power. Your throat chakra cleared of all the words you should have said, but didn't do of this vocal growth. All the things you ought to have spoken but chose to ignore. All of the genuine dialogue you repressed in order to maintain harmony with those who weren't worthy of your quiet. Your voice, which vibrates at levels that elevate rather than depress, heal rather than hurt, became a clear conduit for wisdom, love, and truth when these energetic blocks dissipated. Your voice's tonal tone now contains harmonics that subtly influence listeners. People hear more than simply what you say when you speak. They are reminded of their own greatest potential through an energizing communication. Your voice evolved into a tool for awakening, tuned to frequencies that elicit evolutionary leaps in consciousness and awaken latent DNA. Your presence created magnetic properties that physically reshaped the world to facilitate your ongoing elevation and preservation. Your energy field grew to become a magnet for everything that was in line with your highest good, while there shrank and repelled opportunity, abundance, and good relationships. Your frequency became a beacon that called forth your destiny, allowing resources, relationships, and revelations to find you with miraculous ease. The way time passes around you is impacted by this magnetic change. You learn to work with temporal currents that seem to slow down when you need more moments and accelerate when you're ready for speedy manifestation, whereas they see time as an unrelenting force that robs them of their youth and prospects. Instead of being set, intimidating, or constricting, your relationship with time became flexible, creative, and responsive. The interaction between healing energies and your physical form is also a part of the magnetism. Your system turned into a superconductor for healing frequencies from all sources, including sunlight, water, air, soil, and cosmic radiation, whereas their systems reject regeneration and repair because of unconscious programming surrounding age and limitation. Your cells acquire the ability to remove toxins with remarkable efficiency and to extract the most nutrients from the least amount of input. You didn't simply figure out the secret of bodily preservation, which is the final revelation that brings your transformation narrative to a close. You turned into the code, the frequency signature of divine preservation, supernatural life, and ageless beauty is now transmitted throughout your entire existence. You're more than just someone who appears younger than they actually are. You are a living example of what people can become when they conform to their divinely inspired original form. This explains why they are so deeply shocked when they see you. They're seeing more than just a healthy-looking person. They are coming upon an advanced human prototype, a real-life example of what might happen when one rejects the constraints ingrained in the human experience as a whole. Their basic beliefs about human potential are called into question by your presence, which forces them to face the fact that they have been putting up with fabricated limitations on their own potential. There are considerably more reasons to preserve you than just your own interests. You are living proof that humankind's future depends on deliberate improvement, conscious growth, and collaboration with supernatural powers that have the power to literally alter the laws of physical existence. The reminder that transformation is still possible for those who are prepared to pay the price of genuine alignment is sent to everyone who looks at you and questions how old you are. The way you carry what can only be called phantom youth is what most deeply concerns them, a trait that is so tangible that strangers frequently overestimate your age by decades, even though it exists independently of chronological markers. This phantom youth is neither a frantic hold on previous greatness or a yearning for the past. Your birthright was always the emergence of ageless energy, but it had been hidden beneath layers of social conditioning and constricting ideas about human potential. People are reminded of the joy they experienced before the world taught them to be cynical by the frequencies carried by your laugh. You are as enthralled with amazement as someone who is experiencing it for the first time. However, It is tempered with insight that can only be gained by enduring fire and coming out on the other side refined rather than burned. Their linear minds are unable to classify or understand the aged-looking presence created by this paradoxical fusion of innocence and experience. The phantom youth reveals itself through subtle but automatic micro-expressions that they are unable to consciously identify. The crinkling of your eyes when you are surprised by true joy. The impromptu smile that appears on your face when you are surprised by beauty. The fluidity with which you transition between deep insight and awe-inspiring awe, bypassing their logical analysis. These terms appeal to a part of them that recalls what it was like to be fully alive. Your cells engaged in a full-scale uprising against entropy, the universal force thought to be responsible for all physical decay. Your cells develop the ability to withstand stress and even become stronger when faced with challenges, while their cellular structures give in to oxidative stress, inflammatory cascades, and genetic programming that anticipates deterioration. Glowing star yearning to witness God's miracles firsthand? Plant your spiritual seed now by contributing $100 or more through the YouTube Super Thanks button. Your offering lights the path for others and echoes through His divine plan, bringing His light into every step you take. The basic guidelines governing how living tissue reacts to time were altered by this cellular insubordination. When your consciousness began to disagree with stories about inevitable degeneration, the rebellion started. Your cellular network received messages that various results were possible each time you refused to accept that feeling exhausted was normal, that painful joints were normal, and that declining energy was acceptable. In response, your cells increased the synthesis of substances linked to youth and vitality, improved mitochondrial function, and triggered dormant repair processes. Your immune system also experienced the cellular rebellion, becoming incredibly intelligent about what to assimilate and what to combat. Your immune system learns to discriminate between real difficulties and artificial pressures, while theirs wears itself out fighting fictitious threats and ignoring actual risks. The end effect is an immune response that is so perfectly balanced that it keeps you perfectly vigilant against real dangers to your health while preventing inflammation associated with aging. When you spend a lot of time with someone, something incredible happens to the way you perceive time. Hours are spent on seemingly pointless conversations. Experiences that seem significant end up being fleeting occurrences. Your presence functions outside of traditional temporal frames, resulting in pockets of extended time that allow for greater connection and meaningful interaction, which causes this time distortion. The phenomenon is a reflection of your internal relationship with time, which changed from one of scarcity to abundance when you began to value your being over your doing and ceased gauging your value by production. Others around you experienced temporal expansion as a result of this internal shift, which produced an external field effect. They feel they experienced more than they anticipated, obtained insights that would typically take much longer to develop, and received more than they provided as they leave your conversations. Because you don't have the stress indicators of someone who is rushing against the clock, your mastery of temporal awareness greatly contributes to your aged-looking appearance. The anxiety wrinkles of persistent deadline pressure and the tension lines of chronic rush are absent from your face. Rather, you exude the calm assurance of someone who understands that divine timing always delivers just what is required at precisely the right moment. In real time, your molecular structure essentially rewrites genetic expression through a dance. Your genetic material became fluid, responsive, and creative, whereas theirs followed preset scripts about aging, limitation, and ultimate decline. Environmental factors known as epigenetics, which control which genes activate, started to prefer expressions linked to longevity, vigor, and increased aptitude over those linked to deterioration and decline. In ways that defy accepted genetic theory, this molecular choreography reacts to your emotional states, spiritual practices, and conscious aspirations. Certain genes linked to cellular repair become active when you feel thankful. Healing factors rise and inflammatory indicators drop when you forgive. Your entire genetic expression changes toward optimal function and improved performance when you are in alignment with your genuine purpose. Your molecules' interactions with external elements that usually hasten aging are also part of the dance. In some ways, ultraviolet light that harms other people's skin makes you look more radiant. Adaptive reactions that make you more resilient are triggered by stress that causes others to age prematurely. Your improved molecular machinery effectively processes and gets rid of toxins that build up in other systems. The ultimate contradiction that beyond their understanding is how you are able to unambiguously represent both youthful vitality and ancient knowledge. They anticipate that experience will accompany obvious wear, depth will accompany heaviness, and wisdom will accompany fatigue. However, you show that genuine wisdom actually makes things easier. Authentic experience results in renewal rather than depletion, and true depth produces buoyancy. How you handle obstacles that would cause others to mature quickly is an example of this contradiction. Your ability to love was somehow enhanced by betrayals that ought to have hardened your heart. In some way, losses that ought to have exhausted your resources made you feel more abundant. In other ways, disappointments that ought to have made you less radiant made you more radiant. You constantly turn what ought to be aging experiences into alchemy that prevents aging. The paradox also applies to carrying depth without being weighty, embodying power without becoming harsh, and holding complexity without becoming difficult. In your system, every attribute that usually causes aging stress in people, responsibility, education, and experience, becomes a source of energy and regeneration. You have demonstrated that expansion does not necessitate the loss of vital life force, and that evolution does not require degradation. Integrating all of these components into a single realm of existence that surpasses typical human boundaries completes the riddle of your age-defying beauty. Not only did you delay down aging, by proving that time may be a friend rather than an enemy, you change what aging means. Instead of progressive deterioration, that experience can be cumulative enhancement. Biological programming can literally be overridden by that consciousness. Everybody who comes into contact with you gets a message about their own untapped potential because of the captivating, motivating, and evidently enhanced possibilities that your integration provides. It's more than just astonishment when they find out how old you are. It's an understanding of what they could become if they were prepared to undergo the same drastic change that you did. You now serve as indisputable proof that humans are capable of conscious growth, deliberate improvement, and collaboration with forces that have the power to alter the laws of physical existence. People are still amazed by your age because you've become a live example of how the limitations people take for granted as natural law are, in fact, man-made and can be overcome by properly aligning with heavenly principles of renewal and preservation.